Okay, folks. So let's go and have a look and see what have we learned this week. We've already learned so much this week, so let us do a bit of a revision. So we cast our minds back to Monday morning when we started the course. We spoke about modern management. Modern management. So what do we mean by modern management? Well, basically, we said that modern management is all about this proliferation of new devices. Proliferation of devices. In other words, we don't just have Windows devices that are domain joined that we can manage through group policy and system setup. We've now got iOS devices, Android devices, Mac OS devices, or Windows devices owned by the employee. They're not just domain joined, but also other stuff. Joined plus other. So from a domain joined perspective, group policy works. Config manager works, but from all the other stuff, obviously, it's a different method of managing that, which is typically MDM or mobile device management. The MDM, from the perspective of Microsoft, in June, as we know. But then we first of all went and had a look at Azure Active Directory. So we think about Azure. Azure is Microsoft's cloud, where they provide cloud services. So we've got VMs that we can fire up over here. We've got various platform as a service that they've got over here. And then there's various software as a service that we've got out here. So various services offered by the cloud operator. In order to go and do any of these things, we need to be authenticated. We need to be authorized, etc. And that all comes in via our Azure AD. So we can think of Azure as the entire cloud with all these various services, VMs, platforms, etc. And my Azure AD is my identity base for all of that stuff in the cloud. Then we looked at on-prem. We looked at on-prem with our domain controller. So on-prem, the domain controller is used for authenticating all my various devices on the network. So the devices, normally they are domain joined. So we have a computer object. We have a computer object here in the domain controller. So these computers, when they come up on the network, they actually authenticate. We don't see them authenticating. They do it in the back end, but they've got a password, they authenticate, etc. The user comes along, logs into their device, and they are authenticated against the domain controller. So we know how that works. It all works. That's how it works on-prem. So these are two separate authentication bases. I can go and create my users and groups independently in my Azure AD, as opposed to my users, groups, and computers sitting there on-prem. Okay. Or what I can do is I can go and configure Azure AD Connect, which basically links my tenant to my on-prem domain controller and syncs up users and groups. Okay, syncs all that information up to my Azure AD, so we don't have to go and recreate them. But there's still two separate identity bases that we saw. So if I'm logging in here, I can do stuff on-prem. If I'm logging in here, I can do stuff in the cloud. We could go and set up a federation federated identity, in which case my domain controller here becomes my identity provider. And what I'm doing here in the cloud is my service provider. So this provides the service provider component. So what we're doing here on the service provider side of things, authorization and access, what we're doing over here from the IDP perspective is the authentication. So that's our federated solution. So far, we haven't even spoken about Intune yet. Now, in Windows 10, Microsoft said, well, okay, what we'll do is we'll allow you to Azure AD join the computer. So if you've got a normal computer, not domain joined, okay, so let's do that slightly differently. Just have another computer here that's not part of our domain. So we can go and Azure AD join a computer that the organization owns. So generally with an Azure AD join, it's for an organization owned asset because the organization is doing stuff here in the cloud. Or alternatively, we can have a hybrid Azure AD join, in which case it's domain join and it's also Azure AD join. This we configure through our Azure AD Connect. This, the person themselves goes through and connects the computer. So we did that in our labs. Cost our memory back, I think it was Tuesday morning. We did a lab where we went and created an organizational unit. We took client 2, we dropped it into the organizational unit, we configured the hybrid Azure AD join there, we rebooted client 2, and it became a hybrid joined computer.
Hey, David, a quick question there.
Yes.
All right. I remember you saying that Azure AD join, to do a Azure AD join, you have to have an Azure AD account, right?
You must have a tenancy, yes. So sorry, you mean this person?
That particular
yes,
the red computer there.
Correct.
So you need to have a account in Azure AD.
That is correct. So for the person Azure AD join, they're going to do using their Azure AD credentials.
Exactly. Okay. Just presume that there's a computer, my computer from working from home, my personal computer. We have a federated solution, or we have got a AD Connect with our tenant.
Yep.
Now, if I log into that computer and if I try to join that computer to, if I try to access that with my work email, which is because we are because we are using AD Connect, that means that my work email will also authenticate that computer, right?
Okay, so so your scenario, you've got a computer at home.
Yeah, this is my work computer, for example. Sorry, my home computer, my personal device.
Computer, yes.
We have got an AD Connect set up already.
Yeah.
So my account is pretty much in Azure AD is a hybrid account, like pretty much like in my domain as well as in Azure AD as well. When I say Azure AD,
your personal login or your
my personal login, for example, tej.chetri@easternhealth.org.au.
Yep.
Yep. So because that account is synced across to Azure AD now.
Yep.
So Azure AD knows who I am.
Yep. So you've got an Azure AD account. Yep.
Oh, okay. How do you define that? Do you call it Azure AD account, or because it's because we have got that account is a domain account, but we are using AD Connect. That's the reason.
So what you've got is you have got presence over here on your domain controller.
Exactly.
You're going to work you authenticating against your domain controller.
You've
also got an account in your Azure AD. When you're doing stuff over here in the cloud, Azure AD is providing your authorization. Now, you said you've got a federated setup. So what happens is you're authenticating against your domain controller, passing that authentication through to your Azure AD. Azure AD is still making the authorization decision. But regardless, you've still got separate accounts in your domain controller and your tenancy.
Oh, so we will have two different accounts.
You've got two different accounts, yes.
Oh, that's what I was not understanding clearly. Yes. Okay.
You've always got so you'll always have an account here in your Azure AD as well. Yes.
Oh, I thought it was only for the admin. So for a normal user as well, they should have a second account in Azure AD.
You will have an account in Azure AD, yes. So although you're not authenticating against your Azure AD, you're authenticating it here.
Yep.
Information is being passed through to Azure AD. You still have an account there.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
All good. All good. Yes.
This was first. Is the device needs to be domain joined to do that? Like to authenticate? Then you'll need to really connect.
What do you mean by that? You mean the person signing in, or?
Yes. On the device, like it needs to be domain joined?
So for the user to sign in and do stuff here in Azure, you mean?
Yeah, that's fine. Like it is hybrid environment.
Yeah. Okay. So a work computer.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. It needs to be domain joined, or like if it is not domain joined, it still it will work.
So with a hybrid Azure AD join, it's a domain joined computer.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not.
Yeah.
So I think the answer to your question is no.
No, I got it.
You got it?
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, good.
In the case of, or the scenario where you don't have an on-prem and you're doing 100%,
Okay. Yes, everything's here. Yep.
100% Azure, is Azure then your identity
Yes.
provider and your service
Yes.
provider?
Yep. So all your authentication, everything is being done here in Azure. Yep.
But in the case of this scenario, the identity provider is on-prem
When you do it, got to set up as federated or pass through, yes.
and the service provider is Azure.
Yes. Correct. So your identity provider is then your on-premise.
Yeah, okay.
Now, the other thing we can do is we can go and we can connect, I'll use the word connect, we can connect our computer to Azure AD tenancy slightly differently. Rather than doing an Azure AD join, we can go and log in using our work or school account. So remember there, we did that rather than clicking on the button below, we went and entered our email address. So essentially what that is your email address is generally your Microsoft account. So what happens, it's a personal device that you are registering with Azure Active Directory. It used to be called a workplace join back in Windows. Slightly different to an Azure AD join. Okay, it doesn't have the same, you don't have the same control over the device if it's only registered as opposed to an Azure AD join. So generally, corporate devices would be Azure AD join. Personal device would be Azure AD registered. Yes.
So if you want to access company resources, but not have the company manage, you would register. And if you want to both access and manage, you join.
Yeah. So sometimes what happens is with an Azure AD registration, so you've registered your own personal device with your Azure AD tenancy.
Yeah.
And then based on that, your policy, your compliance policies, conditional access policies, etc., can be based on the fact that Azure AD is aware of that computer. So there is a link between that device and your user identity.
Yeah.
You can have another person do the same thing with that same device. They can also Azure AD register that device. So a single device can have a number of people doing an Azure AD registration with a device, as opposed to with an Azure AD join, but that is based on the device, not the user. So the device can only ever be Azure AD joined once.
Yeah. Cool. And that is no lot of sense. And in the context of these can only ever be joined.
No, those can only ever be Azure AD registered. Those can never be joined. Only a Windows 10 or later computer can be Azure AD joined.
But they can be managed.
Yes, that's different. So we haven't spoken about Intune yet. Remember that.
Yeah.
So Intune is our management. Yeah, that's okay because it's going to be very confusing.
Yeah. No.
It's all good. All good. Okay. Now the other. Sorry. Yes. Yes. Sorry, so say that again, Sunil. So you say you've got on-prem stuff, so you've got your domain controllers, you extract everything is on-prem, and you want to start looking at Intune for management. Okay, so what you're going to need with Intune, you obviously need Intune licenses, but you're also going to need a directory. So you must have an Azure AD tenancy in order to use your Intune. Remembering Intune is one of these services over here, and to use Intune, you require a tenancy. So that's at a minimum what you would need. So probably what you would do is go and check and see the subscriptions. But if you go with something like a enterprise mobility and security, that includes your Intune license, but that might be a bit more expensive than what you want to start off with. I'm not sure exactly what all the various subscription offerings are that Microsoft have. But if you're just looking at doing Intune, I think they've got separate licenses that you can take out just for Intune. And I think it's based on the number of devices that you have enrolled into Intune. But if you're just looking at Intune, what you need is Intune together with Azure AD. You could be using the free Azure AD depending on the extent that you're going to be using your Intune. So you might get away with the Azure AD free. Remembering, if you don't have premium Azure AD, if you don't have a premium license, then there's a little bit more work that you might have to do in allowing users to enroll into Intune, because you can't do automatic enrollment unless you've got premium.
So David, on the same.
Does that sort of help you there, Sunil? Yeah, absolutely. You can keep on using the on-prem. So Exchange Server's got nothing to do with the Intune and so on. But what you could do is go with Microsoft 365 solution, where you move your email out into the cloud as well. But yeah, you don't have to do that. You can continue using it on-prem, and you can just use your Intune for your management. Hybrid management. You mean hybrid management? Co-management? Well, it depends on what you guys want to do. But because you've got a domain already, you'll be managing your stuff using your group policy. Do you guys use Config Manager as well? Okay, so you'll just be managing it from a group policy perspective on-prem. So say again, you've got a third-party mobile device management solution. Okay. Okay, but you want to look at Intune from that perspective. Yeah, sure. So what you'll need Intune. You'll need obviously your Azure AD tenancy, and then as you've seen in the course, there's that section where you can go and check your group policies against Intune policies. But basically, that can be part of your overall project, and look and see what you can move into Intune, what you can move out of your group policy and move into Intune, if that's what you want to do. Or what you could do is just use your Intune for your mobile device management and leave all of your on-prem stuff being managed on-prem. So it just depends on what you want to do as an organization. If you just want to use your Intune for mobile device management and leave your current computers and then managed on-prem the way you do it, you can do that as well. All good.
So David, Intune can be per user or per device. We have both options.
Sorry, say again, yeah.
So just a second. So we can buy Intune per user or per device. This can be per device as well.
The licensing for Intune?
Yeah, a license for Intune, yeah.
I think the licensing for Intune is done on a user basis. So the user enrolls their device into Intune.
Okay, yep, that makes sense.
All good. All right, folks. So we
Sorry, David. Got one question for you. Probably a simple one. But let's say if we've already got a device, a laptop that's organization owned, it's already on the on-prem DC, and on Azure, we have configured it to be a hybrid AD joined. So the moment this computer and the user logs in, it automatically picks it up saying that it's a hybrid joined device. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in the case where it's domain join and you've done a hybrid ready join.
Yep.
So what's your question there, Bobby? So when the user logs in,
Yep. When the user logs in, it recognizes that it's already a hybrid Azure AD joined. As long as
Yeah.
you've already included it on Azure AD.
yeah. So if your computer's domain joined and you've
Yep.
configured your hybrid Azure AD joining here and the computer's rebooted, that's it.
Okay.
It's not a hybrid Azure AD joined computer. It doesn't matter. The user doesn't even matter whether the user's logged in or not.
Yep.
It's through rebooting the computer
Mhm.
that will automatically become hybrid Azure AD joined.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
That's done at the device level, not the user level.
Perfect. Thank you.
All good. All good. Okay, let's keep going. So, as we mentioned, the Intune requires Azure AD because Azure AD is the authentication base for it. So, I can have a device that is joined to my Azure AD, or I could have a device that is just being managed by Intune, or I could have both. Okay. If I've got automatic enrollment into Intune enabled, then what happens is, if I've got the premium edition of Azure AD, when the user joins their device to Azure AD, they will also automatically be enrolled in Intune as long as that user has a license. Okay. So the user needs a license for that. They also need a usage location. Why do we need usage location? Well, we're going to store information about a user in the Microsoft Cloud once they've gone and Azure AD joined a computer. So we want to make sure that that information is stored in the region that the user resides. So for legal reasons, it doesn't cross country boundaries. So that's why we must have a usage location. If I do not have the premium edition, then we can't do the automatic enrollment. That's just something to bear in mind. What else? Yes, limitations. So,
Sorry, when you say automatic enrollment, we're talking about in Azure AD Connect, we've linked an OU, and when device.
no. So when I say automatic enrollment, user does an Azure AD join and automatically gets enrolled into Intune. So they don't have to. They don't have to Azure AD join and enroll.
Okay.
It's all done as one step.
Okay. All right.
Where was I going to there? I'm going to say something I can't remember. Oh, yes. So remembering the defaults, user can enroll up to 5 devices here, and a user can Azure AD join up to 20 devices over there. So those are our defaults, but we can change that. What's my maximum over here?
100? No, 15.
What's my maximum over here?
50, I think.
Unlimited.
Oh, unlimited.
Like a slide date.
So 20 is the default, but yeah, you can literally have whatever you want. So there is a mismatch between these two, which I always find a bit strange, because you can enroll devices into Intune or management, such as iOS, Android, and Windows, but you can only Azure AD join a Windows device. You would sort of think you'd see the opposite over here. It's more likely you got more devices in Intune than what you've Azure AD joined.
Wasn't there something about 1,000 devices as well?
So say again, Bobby.
Wasn't there something that we can enroll 1,000 devices or something?
DEM, yeah.
My device enrollment manager.
Yep.
So yeah, them can enroll up to 1,000 devices in Intune. You are correct. Okay, so that was sort of the first 2 lessons covered off. Gosh, so much stuff. So much stuff there that you guys learned just in 2 lessons.
That's bad. What you all want.
Phew. So the board a bit crusty. Okay, so now that we know how to do automatic joins and our tunes and all the rest, we then said, or we then looked at profiles. Right. Configuration profiles. What's a configuration profile?
Policy in the cloud.
So basically, it's how we want our devices to be configured. Okay. So the basic configuration profiles we created in Tune that then applies to those enrolled devices. We could call it a policy
In the cloud.
sitting in the cloud, sitting in Tune. Okay. So that's basically, you can think of this here as similar to your group policy. This is how you configure your group policy for these various devices. We also looked at applications. We looked at traditional methods of managing applications, so config manager, group policy, and we looked at modern methods in Tune. Yeah. We looked at compliance policies. Another type of policy we can configure in Intune. Now, obviously, for compliance policy to work, the device needs to be enrolled. We can't do compliance if the device is not enrolled. We might just use that for reporting, or more typically, it's linked to a conditional access policy. Now, we saw we could define conditional access policies in Intune, but we could also define conditional access policies in our Azure tenancy. So Intune will pass the compliance state to Azure. So Azure can also make use of its conditional access policies based on compliance. But we also saw that conditional access is not only based on compliance, we can base it on things like the application the user is using in order to access the data. We could do it based on
Device, operating system.
user location. So that would be, so device operating system, that would be part of your compliance policy here.
Oh, okay.
You would define what operating system, etc., the device needs to run. That would be then the compliance. It is compliant, and you pass that information onto your conditional access.
Okay.
All right. So conditional access typically linked to a compliance policy, but can also be done for other stuff outside of compliance. And conditional access policies can be written in Azure or in Intune. Yes.
I know I asked before, do they sync? Like if I go into Intune with all my conditional access policies, is it going to match what I say in Azure?
No, because they're different.
They're different.
Yeah.
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 Even though they're linked.
No, well, they're not really linked. What it does is Intune will send the compliance status to Azure. So Azure can then make decisions based on any conditional access stuff that you configured in Azure,
Yeah.
as opposed to the conditional access that you might configure in Intune.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just jot my memory, see what else we did. So configure user device profiles, we spoke about that. Application management, we spoke about that. We have spoken about the, yep, okay. What else? MAM, mobile application management. What is MAM all about? Good. So iOS and Android, where I can go and specify policies for around the application, so the protection travels with the application. So remembering that means the device itself doesn't have to go and be enrolled into Intune. So it doesn't matter about all of this stuff over here, because the protection is sitting on the application. So you could use any device. We put the protection around the actual application itself. What do we call that in Windows?
VIP.
Good, VIP, Windows Information Protection. So done slightly differently, but same concept. What is an enlightened app? Word, Excel, PowerPoint. So what we mean by an enlightened app is it knows when the user is using a from a personal perspective, it doesn't apply any of these policies. When they're using it from a business perspective, it applies those policies. When we were talking about WIP, we also spoke about DLP and IRM. So data loss prevention, where I've got a system where I define my various policies around data, and then I've got a process of looking for that data in what the user is doing and apply my policies. So I used an example yesterday where we had 4 numbers, dash 4 numbers, dash 4 numbers, dash 4 numbers being a credit card. And if the user was trying to send that out in an email, we could stop that from happening because it's a risky thing. Okay, so that's our data loss prevention. As opposed to my information rights management, there what we do is we encrypt the content, so encrypt our data, and the user gets a use license. In other words, we specify in that use license what they can do. You can read this document and that's it. You can't email it, you can't print it, etc. So they're limited, it's further limited compared to our normal permissions. Because if normal permission, if you've got read access, you could do print it, you could copy it, you could do whatever. So that provides us better control because the data is encrypted. So we use these things in our Windows information protection, remembering if I've got an Azure RMS license, which is basically Microsoft's information rights management solution, we can use that with our WIP. But regardless, WIP always encrypts things on the device using EFS. And we did a bit of a whiteboard session yesterday on EFS to explain how that worked, our encrypting file system.
So David,
Yes, yeah.
do we need a separate license that is for IRM, Azure RMS?
Yes, you need a separate license for
It's
this.
not-
for this.
It's not
This is
covered
for-
in Intune.
Say again?
Intune
No,
won't cover
no.
DLP and DLP as well.
DLP, yes, no, that's covered, but not
Yeah.
RMS. Azure RMS is a separate license.
Oh, okay.
All good. Okay, we looked at reporting, data links. What else? I think that moved us on to our security side of things. Yeah, we spoke a whole bunch about security yesterday. So main just there was we looked at yeah, so one of the big things there is we looked at this concept of kernel, user mode, Windows, container, adding a nano kernel to it. We got a Hyper-V container. Okay, so we spoke about that yesterday. We just back in server 2016. So in our Windows 10 64-bit version, not the 32-bit version, and in Windows 11, which is only 64-bit, they use this concept to add additional security around our various kernel level processes, etc. So we saw there what we could do is we could go and define something called WDAC plus device guard, which just used to be called device guard originally. So what was that all about? Well, that was where I might have an administrator terminal, and because I'm logging on with administrative credentials, maybe domain administrator, hopefully not, but at least at least administrative credentials, because I've done some role-based access control. So yeah, lots of organizations just, you need to be administrator, they go add you to domain admins. So, but yeah, if you're an administrator as opposed to a normal user, it means you've got privileged access. So you've got greater access to systems. And if you don't look after those accounts properly, the Russians steal them and then break into your Medibank Private details. That's what happened with Medibank Private. Is that last year? Or the year before? I don't know. Was it last year? It was last year, was it?
Yeah, my mind was so.
It was ridiculous, wasn't it?
It's
So the idea over here with our WDAC is on an administrative terminal. We specify what applications that administrator can use. So what does he need to do his job? I don't know, maybe he needs a few admin tools that he's going to be using to manage a few servers. Maybe he has to go to a few particular sites, maybe Microsoft Update site or something like that, or Microsoft Learn to go and get some information. We can specify what sites he's allowed to go to and nothing else. Nothing else. Okay. So we lock it down completely. We define exactly what he can do on that computer. And when they go and open up the application, we go and check the signature of that application to ensure that no malware can be running on this device. We do it in a separate container. So if there was a rootkit on that device for some reason, however it got on there, shouldn't have because it's a lockdown workstation. But let's say some rootkit managed to get onto it. Well, the rootkit can do nothing. It can't run malware because we're only running vetted apps that we check the signature within the Hyper-V container that we know do not contain any malware. If they manage to inject malware into it, it'll fail the signature check. They can't circumvent the signature check because it's being done in an isolated environment that they have no access to. We looked at credential guard. Again, using these containers, instead of storing my administrative credentials on the computer itself, I'm doing it inside an isolated container. Again, only the LSA SS process can talk to the LSA isolated process, and we check its signature before it talks to it. So it circumvents those parts, the hash attacks, etc. Again, something we might be looking at putting on an administrative terminal. And then there were a few other things. Spinning up your edge in a separate container if it's not a valid, vetted site that you're going to. That way, if there was malware on it, it's not going to affect you. You shut down that website and shuts down that container, and it hasn't affected your main computer. Yes, Harrison.
Is there a lab on this in 101?
No, there's a lab on this in the Windows Server courses. We don't do labs on this in this.
Okay.
Yes.
So we could go into Intune and set up a WDAC policy and apply it to our endpoints.
Yeah. In one of the 2016 server courses, we actually do a lab on all the WDAC and credential card stuff. I don't know why they don't do it in the what do you call it, desktop courses, because you would think it's the logical place to do it, but yeah, they've never had it in the desktop course.
And then so we just go and create a policy and then download some dodgy app off the web and just wait for it to get blocked.
You won't be able to open it. Oh, you mean if you're doing WDAC?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just won't be able to open it. It just won't open because
Yeah.
it's not part of your code integrity policy. Okay. What else was important?
Hey, David,
Yes.
that Hyper-V container in Windows 11 and the newer devices, is that running by default?
You mean these security features? No.
No. When we turn those security features on,
Yes.
will that, the Hyper-V container,
Yeah.
will that run by default?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
as soon as you enable these various features, it's going to be using that container. You don't have to worry about that.
We don't have to do anything in the BIOS.
No.
Okay.
No. But basically, you must be running Hyper-V, but
Which is
it's going to be enabled. It's going to be enabled anyway when you run those features.
Okay.
So you must be running the Hyper-V client.
Cool.
Okay, then the other thing we looked at yesterday was deployments, and we're going to continue with deployments today. So we just generally looked at traditional deployments yesterday. So traditional deployments.
Sorry, David, just really quickly on credential guard. Does that work differently on a desktop to a server?
No.
When we're talking about this concept of remote credential guard, Or like,
You mean with Premium P2, where a user is not administrator all of the time? Is that what you're thinking about? I mentioned it on Monday, I think. So with our Premium P2, we have additional capability of a user not being made an administrator. So in other words, you've got your standard user logon, and you've got an administrative logon. With Premium P2, what we can do is say, well, actually, you never become you are never given a administrative logon to log on to. What you do is you request it when you need to do your work. You get it for an hour. You do whatever you need to do, and then you get removed from that group. And when you need to do it again, you ask for permission again. And whatever you do when you're logged in with those credentials is everything is logged. So what are you thinking about?
Is that lapse?
No. So that was something. So lapse is something else. Lapse is local administrator password security. That's where you can manage your passwords on a local your local administrator passwords using a central database. So that's something else.
So that one that you were just talking about, what's that called?
I think it's called privileged identity management.
Privileged access management or privileged identity management.
But PIM's for Azure-based roles, right? Or is that for the device as well?
This is we talk about Azure AD. Yes. So that was in our Azure AD Premium. That is when you're working in Azure AD with particular roles. You can do it on-prem as well. From Server 2016, they've enabled that as well. It's quite complex to set up. You've got to set up a separate administrative forest, and you move all of your credentials into the separate administrative forest, and your forest that you do all your work in is simply a resource. Is simply a standard user forest. So you have no administrators inside your working forest.
Wow.
It's quite complicated to set up, but it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
That's all done in the security course, in the Windows 2016 security course, but they've deprecated that course now. I think they don't get enough people registering for those high-level courses. So they don't make money out of it. So Microsoft just...
When you say high level, like really advanced.
So that's an advanced course. The security course is an advanced course. It's over and above your normal server courses. And if they don't get enough people, interest in the course, then they just get rid of it after a while. Okay, so Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, Config Manager, all my Windows deployment service. So we had a look at that yesterday. Those are my traditional methods. I'm imaging, creating an image. I'm placing an image onto a device, and we did a little lab there where we did MDT and image to computer. Okay, folks, so that was quite a big review. Oh yes, 950, look at that. Okay.
David, can I ask a quick question about MAM?
About MAM, go ahead.
All right. With MAM, we can allow users to install the application on their, say, personal computer without even being enrolled in Intune, correct?
Correct. So when you have MAM policies defined, user can use a MAM-enabled application on any device, whether it is enrolled or not. Okay.
So if once they've installed it, and say, for example, if that application is no longer supported, or if they say for this user left the organization, how can we wipe that application from their computer? Or it's pretty much like can't be done? Because that's not enrolled. That means that there is no wipe feature.
So you cannot you're not controlling the device. So if the device is not enrolled, you can't remove applications from a device. Basically what happens is your MAM policies, whatever you define your MAM policies, will protect your business data. And through the MAM policy, you may be able to erase data. Generally what happens in that case is you've used some sort of encryption software in order to encrypt whatever is on their device. And what it means by doing a local wipe, all you do is revoke their
certificate.
Revoke the certificate, revoke their keys. So it doesn't leave their device, but they can't access it anymore.
Oh, okay.
That's essentially how they get around that.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so you guys feel good about all the knowledge you've learned this week.
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Was that Tej?
Was that Tej talking? Yes, I think it was Tej talking.
Tej said computer for man.
What?
That can you use man on a PC?
You can use MAM on anything.
Yeah.
So MAM is your application. It doesn't matter where you're accessing that application from.
Yeah.
You're creating the protection on the application itself.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, folks, let us go and have a look at what we're going to be doing today, which is modern methods. So let's get this. Green. Okay. And now. Okay, folks, so we're on this very last one over here, deploy using cloud-based tools. So we've got 5 modules here to cover off. First one is on Windows Autopilot, so deploy devices using Windows Autopilot. Then we're going to talk about dynamic deployment methods. So these are our modern methods, these 2 modules. This one over here just looks at planning a transition to modern endpoint management. So here we're looking at, you've got domain joined computers, you're using config manager, you're using group policy, and now you start to use things like Intune, etc. And how might you move stuff across into your Intune? And then these 2 over here, they sort of swap these around. We used to talk about the Azure Virtual Desktop and then move into Windows 365. I actually preferred that order, but whatever, it doesn't matter. This was the original virtual desktop that Microsoft made available as a platform as a service in Azure. And then, was it last year, July? I think it was the year before, 2021. I think it was 2021. Time goes so quickly. 2021, they introduced the managing Windows, they managed Windows 365. Windows 365 is essentially the same as Azure Virtual Desktop, except that it's managed through these 2 offerings. The one is managed through your Microsoft 365 portal. The other one is managed by Intune. Whereas here you would manage it through Azure. So that's really the main differences. Well, that's the main differences from a management perspective. So here you would need Azure skills. Over here, it's easier because you're doing it through Intune. But in this one over here, you're paying a subscription. So you're paying a monthly subscription, whereas here you're paying for what you use. There's a big difference between a monthly subscription and what you use. So during COVID, one of the universities up in Queensland were using the solution for their students. So they had Azure Virtual Desktop for all their students. They found it to be a very, very effective way of doing all the students, the student machines, etc. Another university then thought they'll have a look at that because they heard what this university was doing, but they looked at the new Windows 365 solution and said they would never ever do that because it would cost them so much money. So just bear in mind that this can be a much more affordable option than this option, depending on what it is you're doing. Okay, let's jump in and have a look at Windows Autopilot. Okay, so that's what we're going to be covering off over here. Autopilot for modern deployments. What are my requirements? We can talk about those device IDs. Implement device registration, out-of-the-box customization, examine autopilot scenarios, and how can we do a bit of troubleshooting when things don't work properly. So autopilot, no images, drivers, no infrastructure. In other words, what they're saying over there is the image already exists on the computer. You've already got Windows 10 or Windows 11 on your computer. Let's say it's the Pro version. Can't work with Home Edition, so it doesn't work with Home Edition. Must be Pro or above, or Education or above. So you've got a pro education on your computer through Autopilot. You go and configure it based on your business needs. You can also upgrade it to your enterprise version. So all of that can be done through Autopilot. So what we're doing is we're taking an image that already exists. We're taking an image that already exists, and we are through configuration settings, changing that image to what our business requirements are. We customize the out-of-box experience that a user sees, because basically it's a brand new computer that we can send to a user. IT might never have seen this computer. They get it from the manufacturer, unbox it, turn it on, and Autopilot will take over and do its thing. Okay, what else can we do? Device refresh. Autopilot can be used to reset a device instead of using a traditional method. So I think this was back in about 2019. They added this feature into Autopilot. So what do we normally do? We've given a user a computer and they now leave the organization. So what have we done in the past? The manager takes the computer back, sends it off to IT re-images the computer, and then reissue it to a new user. Well, now what we can do with Autopilot, we can do it through Autopilot. Because after all, the image is there. We simply use the reset or refresh this PC feature that's built into our Windows 10 anyway, or Windows 11, and we simply go and reset the device that way. And done through Autopilot. So pretty cool. So what we do is we reset it, and then we apply our Autopilot image to it, and it's basically a new computer now for the next user who comes in. Yes.
If your machine ships within 11,
Yes.
but you're all using Win 11 ready,
You mean if you want to do it Windows 10?
Autopilot reset it to
I don't think you can do that. No, you need Windows 10 on it. So if you want to go and do Autopilot for Windows 10, then you need Windows 10 on it. You can use Windows 10 to go, you can use Autopilot to go from Windows 10 to Windows 11. I don't know if you can do a downgrade there. I'm not sure about that.
David,
Yes.
with excuse me, with the scenario that you've just gone through, so someone leaves the company, hands their machine back. Is there provision in Autopilot for taking a copy of all the data that may or may not be on?
No, that's a good question, Johnson. No, it won't. It will just wipe it.
Okay.
It'll wipe it and then refresh it we'll basically wipe the computer, sets it back to factory default, so the default image, and then applies the Autopilot image to it. Right.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, it won't save any data on it. Good point.
No worries.
The other option of their data can be in OneDrive. I think that's the other solution. I don't know.
Yes, correct, Tech. So if you're using any of those methods where the data is stored outside of the computer, then yes, it could still reside somewhere. The problem is it would be in that user's OneDrive. So as an administrator, you would need access to the user's OneDrive. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Because just recently we have moved away from home drives for all our users, and we have gone to OneDrive.
Okay.
So yeah,
How are you finding that?
Not too bad, not too bad. We just done it like last month. I was away with the time when we did it, but yeah, look, I know a bit about it, but yeah, something I need to go and check more.
Yeah,
how all the things are working.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mhm.
It is the way of the future, according to Microsoft. So there you go. Okay. Cloud is the future. Comparing Autopilot with traditional methods. So deploying Windows 11 images. Yeah, so we don't deploy an image with the modern methods. So yep, the image must already be on the computer. And this is why we still need we'll still need to do imaging going forward, because what happens if my computer crashes? What happens if my hard disk dies on the computer and I need to put a new hard disk in? Well, there's no operating system on that computer. I need to put an operating system on there. I can only do that through a traditional method. So yeah, we can't deploy an image. It'll be used with any pre-installed operating system. No. If I've got Windows 8 or Windows 7 on it, I can't use Autopilot. Requires a previous Windows 11 installation or Windows 10 installation. Notice how they've dropped Windows 10 from the course now. So Microsoft's looking at retiring it. So yep, we need a previous Windows 10 or Windows 11 to use autopilot. Uses an on-premises infrastructure. So we know I need on-premises infrastructure for traditional methods, but the beauty with autopilot is it's all built into the cloud, so we don't need any infrastructure ourselves. Tools we saw yesterday, ADK, NDT or config manager. They haven't mentioned WDS or WDS there. Whereas over here, autopilot or our Windows configuration designer. So remember, Windows Configuration Designer, I mentioned it earlier on in the week. This was a tool that came out with Windows 10 originally. It was called the Windows Imaging and Configuration Designer. They dropped the imaging from it a few versions later. I think there is a little bit more information about it in the following module that we'll be covering off. But essentially what it is you can go and configure stuff or your computer. So it's almost like a group policy that you configure specifically for a computer. So there are literally hundreds of settings that you can configure, and you export that out as a provisioning package and then apply it to that computer. So that's what the Windows Configuration Designer does. And it was from the concept of the Windows Configuration Designer that led Microsoft to develop Autopilot. So when we're doing an Autopilot template, basically it's using that same concept in order to go and change the underlying image. Yes, Harrison.
Do you manage autopilot from Azure or Intune?
You will see that now. It's done through Intune or through Microsoft Store for Business, but we know Microsoft Store for Business is gone. So, okay. So there we go.
So, David, if we have the image of Windows 10, can we re-image by using autopilot for Windows 11? Can we upgrade the Windows version as well?
You can't use autopilot for imaging. What you can do is you can do an upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11 if your computer supports it, and then use your autopilot for the deployment of the actual business needs.
Okay.
Yep, but you can upgrade it. You can do an upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
That pre-provisioning package you're talking about.
Yes.
Just gets uploaded into Intune and pulled down by the device.
Yeah, there's a number of ways you can do it. You can do it through Intune. You can deploy it through group policies. You can just have it on a USB that you supply to the user. You can have it on a file server somewhere that they access and download. Yeah. It's just a file really at the end of the day. Okay, so here are my Windows Autopilot requirements. So device must have Windows 10 or Windows 11 installed, Pro or above. So Pro Education or above. Obviously needs internet connectivity because it is a cloud service. Intune for managing deployed Windows 10 and later devices. Okay, so it's saying optional over here. What they're saying over here is with Windows Autopilot, as part of our Autopilot profile that we create, we can enroll the device into Intune as part of the Autopilot. So that's what they're mentioning over here. Intune or other mobile device management service for managing deployed Windows 10 and later devices. Devices must be registered to the organization. So we require device-specific information uploaded to our tenancy, to our cloud. Organization must be using Azure AD. It must also use Microsoft Store for Business or Intune. We saw Microsoft Store for Business has been deprecated. Microsoft Store for Business was free. So I could use Autopilot for free in the past. Now we're going to have to use Intune, which I need a license for. Okay. So, so that should answer your question, Harrison. Does it?
Yeah.
So your question was? Do I need Azure AD for Autopilot or Intune? So what you need is you need Intune. But of course, for Intune, you need Azure AD.
Yeah, I was more wondering where you manage it from.
You manage it from Intune. Yep. Access to a bunch of URLs. They mentioned a few of those there. Those URLs, I think they're listed somewhere in your student book. I think there's a long list there in your student book. Those are all Microsoft URLs. So generally, those should not be blocked. But if you were blocking them internal to the organization for whatever reason, you just got to make sure that you unblock them. Okay. What about our device ID? So the device ID is how we know the device belongs to us. So it's a unique identifier for every single computer. We can obtain the hardware IDs of our devices from the vendor and upload them into our tenancy, or we could get the vendor to upload it for us. We could give them permissions to upload it for us, and people do that. Once it's sitting there, we need to go and create our autopilot profile. And then when the device comes up, we'll find the profile and deploy the autopilot profile. So they mention here, Windows Autopilot deployment process. Obtain your hardware ID of the device that you want to deploy, upload the hardware ID into your tenancy, create a Windows Autopilot deployment profile, apply the Windows Autopilot deployment profile to the devices or device groups. So managing autopilot in Intune, configure automatic mobile device management enrollment of Azure AD member devices. For preparing a Microsoft Autopilot deployment, you can manage your Windows Autopilot deployment using Intune or Microsoft Store for Business. We know Store for Business is gone. I should have updated the slide to reflect that. So obviously it'll be done through Intune going forward. Remember, they haven't quite got rid of this yet. It's still holding on there. So they're trying to get rid of it, but you'd probably look at your Intune going forward. You wouldn't go and set it up in Microsoft Store for Business, given it's being deprecated. So what is my device ID? Well, basically it's information about that device stored in a comma separated value file. Now, in our student book, I don't think it's on this slide. In our student book there's a section that talks about generating your own CSV file. So if you look at that section in your student book, generating your own CSV file, let me just check that it is in your new information. Let's make sure it's here. Exam autopilot, prepare devices. There we go. So there it is. Install -script -name get -Windows Autopilot info. After installing the script, you generate your device specific information. So for example, get -Windows Autopilot info.ps1 where do I want to put it? Output file d:/devices/device1.csv. Those, by the way, are single slashes, not double slashes. Again, that's just because of escaping when they do these documents. That's an error.
When you say escaping, what do you mean?
Because this is a control character, or can be a control character when you are. So what they do is when they generate these documents, they do what they call a markup document. And then that markup document is used to produce a Word document or PowerPoint document or a document that you view on the internet, on your web browser, etc. So in order to use a protected character or a reserved character, you've got to escape it. And your backslash is your escape character. So what they've done here is they've actually, because it's a special character, they've actually got to escape your backslash. If you want your backslash to appear, you use a backslash to say, well, don't use this next character that's coming up for its control purposes that it's used for. Use it for its literal backslash that we want. But they don't need to do it yet. But they've done it, and hence it comes up as 2 backslashes.
Right.
Okay, so I've created my comma separated value file. I've stored it here on the D drive under devices. I now upload it to my tenancy. So go to devices, and all devices, import, select your CSV file and import it. Or alternatively, you can do it in one shot. So I've installed my script. I then do get-Windows Autopilot info.ps1-online. So the -online keyword means you're going to create the CSV file and upload it. So in that case, I've added a bit more information over here. I say -group tag autopilot -devices -assign. So I've created a group already, created an Azure AD group called autopilot devices. And what I'm doing is I'm assigning that device ID to this group. Okay. Now, when you go and create your autopilot profile, you can have as many profiles as you like, but we can only ever apply one profile to a device. You know, it makes sense. Can't go and have different profiles applied to a device, what we're going to get at the end of the day. So you can think of your autopilot profile as almost like your image, and you've got a couple of different images to apply. Well, you can only apply one image to a device. If you apply another image to a device, well, it's going to have that other image, not the first one. It's the same concept over here. So what happens is I've created a number of groups. I'm putting these computers into this group, these computers into that group, and then I've got my autopilot profiles assigned to the specific group that it needs to be applied to. Okay. All right, and now we've got a nice little fancy diagram here that shows us that. So, yes.
You know, the previous one, like when you're running that power command, the second one, when you're running it, like it needs to be connected to internet.
So the device you're running that on, in order to do the automatic upload, yes, it must be connected to the internet.
Because this is a new device, you are just
Okay, so for a brand new device, you could get your device ID from your manufacturer. So the manufacturer could supply the device IDs to you. They might do that as a block of device IDs, and then you go and upload those into your Intune, or you can get them to upload them for you on your behalf. So you give them some sort of account that enables them to upload it into your Intune.
The device ID doesn't exist until you generate a list. Like device ID is a term that's
the device ID you've got to, so the device ID has to be generated. Yes.
Used by autopilot.
Correct. But your vendor who you're buying the equipment from can do it for you.
Yeah.
This is generated or expected. We are just extracting it.
Yeah. So for your existing devices that you don't have device IDs, you go and run that script on it to generate the device ID. What it is I think somewhere they tell us what it is here. So just above that we go. Let's just go back to this here. So it's a device serial number, it's a Windows product ID, and a hardware hash. That's basically what makes up your device ID. So unique to the device itself. Okay, so that's just showing us the overall process. A hardware vendor can upload device IDs on our behalf. Alternatively, the administrator can upload device IDs. The administrator might extract from existing devices, create a device ID, and upload it. The administrator creates a deployment profile. So this is my autopilot deployment profile. And then a user, for example, could get the brand new device shipped to them. IT never sees it, and open it up, and it'll go through and do the autopilot self-deployment.
So, David, we can only do autopilot on the existing devices. Like if we are purchasing a new laptop, giving that to the IT, so they have to do the traditional method.
Say again, Nina?
So we can apply autopilot service only on the existing devices, not the, let's say if the IT is purchasing brand new laptops for new employees, so they have to go by traditional method.
No. So here you can see a brand new computer coming from the hardware vendor directly to the employee. Employee unboxes it, and autopilot takes off and does everything. Here's my existing devices. For that, the administrator needs to extract the device IDs and upload them. But for my new devices, hardware vendor can do that on our behalf. Still using autopilot for both.
So how does that work on the new device if there is no image?
There's always an image on a new device. You never buy a computer from a vendor that doesn't already have an OEM.
Sorry. Yeah.
OEM on it.
Yep. That makes sense. Sorry.
All good. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, but if it comes with a Windows? Oh, then it's not going to work. If it's Windows Home version, then you need to re-image it. Home version is not going to work. If you've got a home edition on your computer, you need to do a re-image. Yeah, home edition is not going to work. And that's actually a good point because, well, no, you would normally not have a home edition because as an organization, you're buying your computers from your vendor, you would have specified you need Windows Pro at a minimum. It's only if a user buys their own computer, but Autopilot's not meant for BYD. Okay. Yeah, that's a bit weird. I know Dell sometimes does that as well. They'll supply a new computer with home edition, simply because Dell's trying to sell cheaper. They then market it to us. Look, it's much cheaper than the competition, but then you buy it and that's right. Yeah, exactly.
He said that Autopilot's not meant for BYD.
No, it's not a BYD solution. It's meant for your, because basically you need a device ID, belongs to the company. You upload the device ID into your tenancy.
Is Microsoft working on a BYD?
For Autopilot. But for that, you can use your provisioning packages. That's really where you can use the provisioning package. You have a provisioning package that deploy that against their computer.
Yeah.
From the BYD perspective. Okay, folks. So implement the device registration and out of box. Step 1, create a Windows Autopilot deployment file. So required profile that specifies the settings to apply to the device. You can create and use multiple deployment profiles, but only a single profile can be deployed to a device, as we mentioned. And until you apply the deployment profile, Windows Autopilot doesn't manage the out-of-box experience setup phase of the device. But Windows Autopilot will take control of the out-of-box experience setup phase on the devices once you've applied the profile. So basically all they say, you need your device ID up there, you create your profile, upload your profile, device comes on, finds a device ID, applies the profile to it. So it might look something like this. User has signed in with Windows, with Microsoft. And they enter your work or school account. So that's the normal out-of-box experience, as opposed to Autopilot. Windows comes up. It says, look at that. I found the device ID linked to this computer for ADATM Azure AD. Welcome to ADATM Azure AD. So it's already identified that this is your Azure AD domain. And you're going to be logging in with your Azure AD credentials as opposed to logging in with your Microsoft account. Yes.
Can you do a hybrid join Autopilot?
You mean that we had earlier on, the domain joined computer that's also Azure AD joined?
Like, can you join it in the domain? Autopilot?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So you get connecting to network, like while you're doing it at home, and you open up, power up. When you connect to your Wi-Fi, does it happen here? Before this week, how is going to identify that? Okay, you just came up with that, it recognized it belongs to this organization, this profile has been.
Yeah, good point. It does require internet connectivity. So you're saying, where do you set up your internet? Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question. I don't know what would happen if you do not have internet. I guess it just would fail the setup.
Yeah,
because without internet connectivity, it can't do it.
So David, pretty much the user unboxes the computer.
Yep.
It connects to the home Wi-Fi.
Yep.
And they will see that prompt there. The reason is because the device ID is already uploaded in Intune. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that fast though? You know what I mean? It's like as soon as the Wi-Fi is turned on,
Yes.
I think the background process is like, okay, I will check the device ID.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So it will already pick up. Okay, cool. I found you here in your and this is your tenant. Log in with your log in
So,
with your credentials.
so it has to go and find the tenant first, then it has to find and check the devices as well.
Oh,
So it
yeah, exactly how that does it, I'm not sure, but yes.
okay.
Sorry, Harrison, you had a
No,
question.
that's all right. Just as important. So how does the device get joined to the domain if it doesn't have access to the network domain yet? Or does it talk to Azure AD and then does Azure AD talk to
What you can do is you can do what they call offline domain joins. So an offline domain join is something that Microsoft introduced back in 2012 or maybe 2008 or two. It's basically a file that enables it to join the domain without being on the domain. More typically here, though, I think you would be doing this from your office environment. So you would be on your domain anyway. So it wouldn't really have a problem with that. But yeah, if you're not on-prem, if you're doing it from home or something like that, then you would need a what they call a offline domain joint blob, ODJ blob.
So you couldn't, like the user couldn't sign in, it joins to Azure AD, and then Azure AD Connect comes in and syncs it back to.
No, Azure AD doesn't sync back to your on-prem now.
Yeah.
But with an offline domain join, and exactly what's in the offline domain join file, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you can deploy that anyway. So
Using
the whole
package.
No, this wasn't a provisioning package. The whole idea behind this was back in the direct access days. So remember the direct access we spoke about was the technology they introduced in 2008 or 2, where you were always connected to your domain, regardless of where you were, and set up those IPv6 tunnels. I did a little bit of a whiteboard session on it on Tuesday, Wednesday. So that's when they introduced this concept. So you could have a computer that you've sent out to a satellite mine site that's not on your domain. They run the offline domain, the ODJ blob, and turn the computer on, run ODJ blob, configure in that you've got your direct access configuration, and bang, you're joined to your domain. Without actually being on the domain.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so as you can see, Autopilot takes over and shows the user the out-of-box experience screens that you have defined within your Autopilot profile, as opposed to what happens over here. Now, the other big thing here is when the user does it this way, they become a local administrator on the computer. When you do it through Autopilot, that user does not become a local administrator on the computer. Okay, you'll define your own local administrator through your Autopilot profile. Now, let me just go and check and see what's going on in our student guide. They do have these in the student guide. Remember devices, stations, so that's that section there. Yeah, okay, so we're on to, we're on to this over here, examining Autopilot scenarios. There we go. There's all our scenarios. So, my Autopilot scenarios. We have got Windows Autopilot user-driven mode. Profile. Let's get to that section. Okay, so Windows Autopilot user-driven mode. This is what we've been talking about over here. So that's where user gets the computer, unboxes it, plugs it in, turns it on, chooses their language, local keyboard, connects it to wireless or wired network. And they then go through and enter their Azure AD credentials, and off it goes and deploys the computer. We'll use that. So they mentioned a couple of things there in your student book that I think Harrison had some questions on. Some of you might have had some questions on that too. So to enable user-driven mode for Azure Active Directory join, you need to take the following actions as part of preparing your Autopilot deployment. Users must be able to join Azure AD. So you've got to make those settings in your Azure portal. If using Intune and not Microsoft Store for Business, so we will be using Intune, user-driven mode must be selected in the autopilot profile, assigned to the device, and the autopilot profile must also be assigned to the Azure AD device group. The device must be added to Windows Autopilot, and a profile must be assigned to the device. So we do all of that in Intune. User-driven mode is also supported for hybrid Azure Active Directory join. So in addition, device must be running Windows 18 and 9 or later. Hybrid Azure AD join must be specified as the selected option under join to Azure AD. Device must be able to access the internet and an Active Directory domain controller. And the Intune connector for Active Directory must be installed that performs the on-prem AD join instead of requiring user permission to join. So that should answer those questions over there you had with that. But yeah, if you're on-prem, then you've got line of sight anyway.
So you couldn't install a VPN client as part of autopilot?
Yes, you can. You mean to enable VPNs for that device afterwards?
To enable you to talk to a DC?
No, so you wouldn't do that, but no. But what you could do is you could set up your configuration profiles afterwards. So if you're managing the device through Intune later on, then you apply whatever profiles you've configured in Intune. So if you've got VPN profiles there, Wi-Fi profiles, etc., that will be applied once it has been enrolled into Intune.
So you could join to Azure AD exclusively, deploy the profile, contain the VPN client, and then join to the domain after.
No, joining to the domain is done. Well, I mean, you could do that, but then it's not being done as part of your autopilot. So for autopilot, hybrid Azure AD join, device must be able to access the internet and an Active Directory domain controller. The Intune connector for Active Directory must be installed. It performs the on-premises AD join instead of requiring the user permission to join. So,
but in the scenario of a remote user being onboarded, you could still use that. You could use that example you gave before.
yes.
I guess that will be depending on for VPN we are using device-based certificate or user-based certificate. That will be making a difference there.
Okay, my other modes, Windows Autopilot self-deploying mode. So that's where it's like it's like a zero-touch installation almost. Yeah, not quite zero-touch because you've got to turn it on. But yeah, there's no user intervention. Generally, that's used for kiosk devices. Autopilot for existing devices. So what they're talking about over here, autopilot for existing devices, this is what we mentioned yesterday, where we've got maybe Windows 7 or Windows 8 on a device. So through Config Manager, through Special Task Sequence and Config Manager, it's in a later Config Manager. They're not mentioning the version there. I think it was version 2009 where this was introduced. Don't see it mentioned there, but I think it was version 2009 of Config Manager. So in one of the later versions of Config Manager, they got a new task sequence. So that task sequence in Config Manager simply goes and upgrades the computer from 7 or 8.1 to Windows 10 or Windows 11. And then from there, you can use your Windows Autopilot to go through and do the rest of it. So it's sort of a bit of a cheat because they say it's a modern method, but what you're really doing is you're doing imaging together with autopilot, but you don't have to create the image. The task sequence is already there for it to do. Okay, now here is an interesting one. Windows Autopilot white glove or pre-provisioned deployment. It used to be called white glove. They've now renamed that to pre-provisioned deployment. What is that all about? With our pre-provisioned deployment or the older white glove deployment, what happens is the IT guys get the computer first. So we don't go and send it to the user directly. We get the computer first, and we actually run half of the autopilot process, installing all of the applications, etc., on the computer, and then send it off to the user, who still goes through their out-of-box experience, as they would have if it was a brand new computer, but it means that the computer gets set up much more quickly. So one of the things we did find, now this was introduced first back in 2019, this white glove deployment, but it is something that we found very much during COVID with all the lockdowns, where companies were sending, or at least companies were having the vendor send the computer directly to the user. And great, we've got our new computer, unbox it, turn it on, goes through autopilot. 2 days later, it's finished setting up because they were on a 3G connection or they had a low-speed internet. And it took ages for it to actually get set up. So this was a genuine problem. Lots and lots of people had problems where autopilot just took so long. So yeah, using pre-provision, that can help to prevent those sort of problems. And then the Windows Autopilot reset that we mentioned earlier on. So we can do that to go and reset a computer. Two different options: local reset, which was introduced in the 1903 version, and remote reset, which was introduced then in the 1909 version. So with a remote reset, it's probably better. Local reset, you've got to be present on the device and initiate the reset. For the remote reset, you can do it remotely. So scenario, user leaves the organization, hands the computer back to the manager. Manager just needs to make sure the computer is up and running. Rings up IT and say, yep, they've handed back the computer. You can re-image it anytime you want. And IT says, yep, sure, we'll do that. We're not going to re-image it. What we'll do is we'll just do an autopilot refresh. So they can initiate that remotely. Cool.
So
But
reset is a full wipe of the device. Autopilot reset just resets it back to before it was
full reset of the device.
right.
So what they basically do with the autopilot reset, it resets it to its factory default and then applies the autopilot profile to it.
Right. Could you just apply the
It's sort of like this over here, the self-deploying mode,
yeah.
but also resets the device to the default.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the difference between an autopilot reset and just a standard reset?
The standard reset, you haven't got your autopilot profile applied to it.
Okay.
So if you just go and reset a device, you could then go and use that device. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this upcoming lab, by the way. We're going to go and reset the computer we built yesterday to make it look like a brand new computer and then run an autopilot for it.
And with the pre-provisioned deployment, that might help with the scenario we were talking about before, where you could join it to the domain and then
Absolutely. Yes, you could do that. Yes, you could do that. Yep. Okay. If there's problems, what do we do? Well, again, depending on which version of Windows you were running, they slowly added additional troubleshooting capability in Windows Autopilot. But yeah, now with our latest versions, you should have all these capabilities. So what would you want to check? Check and see, has Azure AD and Microsoft Intune been configured as specified in your Autopilot configuration? Can the device access the service described in the Windows Autopilot networking requirements? Did you see the correct screens that you expected to see? Were you able to join Azure AD? And were you able to enroll into your Intune? So some of the troubleshooting steps over here. You can also use the Windows Autopilot diagnostics, but yeah, some of the troubleshooting steps over here. So out-of-box experience issues. You can use the event tracing for Windows. So that can be used to capture detailed information from autopilot-related components. What it does is it captures logs from early on in the deployment right through to later on in the deployment. That was the first bit of troubleshooting they built into autopilot. I think that was around about 1809 or something like that. And then in the next version, they introduced hardware registry setting. So information about the autopilot profile settings are stored in the registry under HKLM software, Microsoft provisioning diagnostics autopilot. So that's the diagnostics they were talking about that you can go and have a look at. And then in the next version, which I think was the 1909 release, they added in some logs. So that's under our application and services logs, Microsoft Windows provisioning diagnostics provider autopilot. So those are the three areas we can go through and view information if we have problems with the autopilot.
How would we get to event viewer if we run into a problem with autopilot?
Say again?
if we run into a problem with autopilot and it can't be autopiloted, how do we get to the?
Well, it just means that autopilot failed to deploy your image. The computer's still got an image on. You can still
Oh,
boot up
right.
into the
So you're still
computer and
logging
go and view what's going on. Yeah.
Can we check on the portal itself?
Um,
Diagnostic.
I don't think there's any diagnostics there. You might see it's failed. So yes, you can see if it's failed or not. For some of you, you're going to have a failure when you do your autopilot now, because sometimes it fails in the lab, and you'll see what it tells you. It says failed, and you can click on it. And it doesn't really give you much information.
If it fails in a very clean lab, doesn't give me a lot of confidence for any.
It does. It fails in reality. Believe me.
Yeah.
Okay, troubleshooting Azure AD join issues. What might be my Azure AD join issues? Generally, the problem is the user has not been allowed to do an Azure AD join, or they've joined too many devices to Azure AD. So that's typically your problem with Azure AD join. So make sure it's configured that they can join the device, or make sure that they haven't joined too many devices, depending on what your limit is. Remembering the limit is 20 by default for Azure AD join. Intune enrollment. What are the problems that I could have with Intune enrollment? You can tell me.
Similar to the ability if the user has joined too many devices.
Cool. If they've enrolled too many devices, yep.
Second would be if the profile is getting certain profile. Like June is communicating with the autopilot profile.
Okay, that could be a problem, but there's another one. A license. Yep. So the user must have a license. Okay, so that's the other thing. They need a license in order to enroll into Intune. Troubleshooting device import. If your device ID didn't import properly, normally it's a problem with the padding. So you can just regenerate the CSV file or go and modify it yourself if you know what you're doing. That normally gets rid of that problem. Okay, folks. I think at that point we should have a tea break, because we've still got lots of theory to do. So let's take our tea break, 10:39. Back in 15 minutes, we will then look at our dynamic deployment methods and the rest of this module. Let's go and have a tea break first.